Hello, welcome to 5 non-negotiable actions to prepare your flight attendant dream for takeoff. Free webinar hosted by Flight Attendant Career Connection. I'm excited to be teaching this class, but before we dive in, I want to quickly go over a housekeeping item. A couple housekeeping items. One is Study Hall. So Study Hall is a new free service that we've been doing. So basically, if you have purchased the Flight Attendant Career Connection interview workbook in any manner at any time, you are invited. It is free. We are meeting every Friday at 12 p.m. Pacific, noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, every Friday through the end of May. We started in April. It's been a really fun time to connect. The way Study Hall works is we work for 25 minutes independently and then come together for about 10 minutes at the end to talk. Jason, I don't know if you're on, but there's an electric car outside my door. If you could come, one of my children is running the remote control car up against the door of the room that I'm in. So we're going to see if we can get that taken care of. But the thing that I wanted to make sure everyone notes, if you've been coming to Study Hall, I had to change one of the dates. So we were going to meet this Wednesday. We are not. We are instead meeting on Tuesday. So the graphic that's up on the screen, and I'll make sure I send out an email too, and I've already updated the page, but we will be meeting Tuesday at those same times in the evening, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, and then we're going to meet on Sundays and Wednesdays throughout May, kind of alternating. That's all the details. I just wanted to kind of quickly go over that because there was a big change in it. And also, I'm putting, if you're not know what I'm talking about, I'm also just I'm going to pop into the chat the link just so you can read the details and sign up. Study Hall sign up information. So that's that. All right. There is okay, so let's go ahead and I'm going to hide that because we don't need that anymore. All right, hello and welcome to why you're here, which is to watch the 5 non-negotiable actions that will prepare your flight attendant career for takeoff webinar. I'm really excited to be teaching this class. This is a class that I created close to a year ago, I think. But, the current situation in aviation is very different than when I created it. The basics of this webinar are still sound because the way you become a flight attendant hasn't changed, but the current culture of aviation has changed in some ways because of the coronavirus and the way that it has affected the economy and travel. So this webinar, if you've watched it before, will be a little bit different because I'm going to speak to the way that society and everything is today. But first of all, I want to go over more housekeeping, another housekeeping. You have the option to leave comments, whether you're watching on Facebook or if you're watching this replay on YouTube. Or you're watching the live on YouTube or Facebook, or even if you're watching the replay, comments are awesome. I'm always checking the comments even later. I get a notification if you happen to be watching the replay, and I'll pop over and try to answer your question. Or I'd love it if you even just told me that you're watching it, because that always makes me feel good that something that I'm creating, especially my free stuff, is helpful. If you're watching live with me right now, I also will see the comments. Actually, they pop right up on my screen. Easy for me to see if you have a question or something like that. So that's a little bit of housekeeping. Let's go ahead and dive into the actual webinar. So I'm really, really excited to spend a couple hours with you this afternoon. And the main reason is because I know that if you're here, we have something in common. And that is the fact that we both love the flight attendant career. We both see the power in it. We both believe that it's an honorable job, it's an honorable career. We're seeing that even more now as we go through this essential versus non-essential, and we really do see flight attendants out there working in putting themselves at risk, to move cargo, to move mail, to help move passengers, to meet family members, to go to the bedside of someone who is maybe passing away, and it has now become, it's not a trip anymore, it's now become essential travel. I have friends who've posted pictures moving medical personnel, especially into New York, moving just groups of medical personnel that are being relocated to focus on the hot spots, and without flight attendants, that would not have been something that would have been an option. So even right now, we can agree that it's even become more clear to society what we already believe, that the flight attendant position is a powerful and an honorable one. Another thing that we probably have in common is that we believe that the flight attendant career is a rewarding one. And above all, that it is a fun and exciting career choice. One thing that is unique to the flight attendant position is that although the qualifications that are required to apply and be hired as a flight attendant are fairly basic, they're not complex. There's not a lot of very stringent regulations to get hired. The competition is what is very complex, and the competition is what is very intense. And so these complexities are why I created this class. It's to give you 5 actions that will prepare your flight attendant career for takeoff. Before we dive into the lessons and the 5 steps, I wanted to introduce myself. We maybe have some new faces watching this webinar, probably have new faces that are going to be watching the replay for sure. So I wanted to just kind of quickly introduce myself, give you some background on who I am and what I'm about and what I do and why I'm teaching this class and why I'm so passionate about the flight attendant career. So the first thing that I wanted to tell you is that I am from South Carolina. I'm from the Low Country, coastal South Carolina, the Charleston area. That's where I grew up. When I turned 19, though, I started kind of moving around, and I've lived all over the country. I've lived in Washington State. I've lived in New York. I've lived in Washington, D.C. I've lived in Ohio. I've lived in Tennessee and North Carolina and Texas. I've lived lots of different places. I currently live in Hawaii on Oahu. My husband works for Southwest Airlines on the ground. He's in ground ops. And when Southwest opened the Honolulu station last year, just over a year ago, we had the opportunity to transfer, and we jumped at it so that we could take kind of a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to have the opportunity to live in Hawaii. So we've been here just over a year, and we are really loving it. It's far away from family, and it's expensive, but we are really, really happy living the aloha life here on Oahu. Like I said, I'm married. I also have 3 children that are elementary school age that, of course, moved here with us too, and they are there as well, living the aloha life. But a little bit about my background. In 2006, I landed my first flight attendant position with United Airlines. I then joined PSA Airlines in 2009, and I had the opportunity with them to serve as an instructor and a check flight attendant. And then in 2011, I hung out my wings when my first baby was born. Like I said, I now have 3 children. And then in 2013, I wrote my first book called Looking Skyward, Turn Your Flight Attendant Dreams into Reality. And I also started the Flight Attendant Career Connection Facebook group. Since then, I've had the opportunity to personally help thousands of aspiring flight attendants over the last almost 7 years. And through the Facebook group and my emails and other resources like that, I've had the opportunity to help over 100,000 aspiring flight attendants reach their flight attendant goals over the last couple of years. So that's been really, really cool and really, I want to say inspiring, but it's been I'm just honored that I've had the opportunity to help so many people join a career in a profession that I've been so passionate about. So I wanted to tell you a little bit more about why I got hired at United in 2006 and then joined PSA Airlines in 2009. So I wanted to tell you a little bit of that. Well, not the little bit. I'm going to tell you all of that story. So I think what they say is, I think the young people say, I'm going to spill the tea. But here's kind of what happened. In 2006, I was working for Bank of America. I was a teller, and I really loved my job in customer service. I loved the team that I worked with, but I always had been interested in the flight attendant career. And I remember visiting the flight attendant websites a little bit, but this was right when everyone started applying online and you still could find things in the newspaper. I also remember having Northwest Airlines phone number, flight attendant recruiting phone number update in my phone, where you would call it and it would give you a recording whether or not they were hiring or not. So this was right there on that change over from the in-person interviews to more of the online situations. And I'll never forget that I was one day I was at home and I was kind of messing around on the computer and I saw that United Airlines was hiring. And I thought, you know what? Let me see if I'm qualified. I didn't even know if you needed training. I didn't really know anything about the situation at the time. But I went on the website, they were hiring, and I started to read the qualifications. 2 to 3 years of customer service experience, high school degree, ability to relocate, ability to work nights and weekends, flexible schedule, varied schedule, ability to be on your feet for 16 hours at a time. All of these requirements. And I realized that I met them all. Yep. And so I got to the end of the list and decided that I was qualified to apply. So I filled out the application, uploaded my resume. I did a personality assessment immediately. And at the end of that personality assessment, the screen refreshed and popped up. We'd like to invite you to an interview in Washington, D.C. Please pick one of these 3 dates. I clicked on one and it took me to another page. I was able to I didn't book my flights there. I was able to secure my position, get a phone number to call the travel center to get my flights. And my parents came home a few hours later because I was living with my parents at the time. I was in my early 20s. And I was like, hey, guess what I'm going to do next week? And it was completely on a whim and completely out of left field. I went to Washington, D.C. I went to Dulles. I flew into Dulles out of Charleston early one morning. It was a Wednesday morning. I flew in early. I rode the metro subway by myself for the first time. Still super proud of that, y'all. I don't know if you could tell, but I'm still super proud of that. I rode down. I will never forget that my interview was in a building on Pennsylvania Avenue, which is the same street that the White House is on. And I just remember it was such an amazing kind of day that I was getting to do several things that I never thought that I would even be able to ever experience. The interview that I had was similar to what we do today in the video interview. So I was actually interviewed by a company who United had hired to pre-screen applicants. So this was before the video interview. So I went in and I talked with a lady who worked for this outside recruiting company. She asked me several questions. We went over my resume. And at the end of that interview, she said, I'd like to invite you for a full day in-person interview at United's headquarters in Chicago. And I said, thank you so much. Thank you. That's amazing. Got my information, got back on the airplane, flew home, and just a few days later, I think it was the next Thursday, I flew up to Chicago to have my full in-person interview with United Airlines. I did a group activity. I had what did we do? We did a lot of waiting, a lot of times in the lobby being observed and interacting with each other. We had a time to listen to a presentation. We had a time to ask questions. And then we also had a one-on-one face-to-face interview. I was interviewed by a human resources recruiter. And at the end of that interview, she said, we'd like to offer you an invitation to training with United. And I remember looking at her and saying, oh my gosh, you just changed my life. I cannot believe that this is happening. And 2 weeks later, I was on my way to training. So I applied with United on March 16th, 2006, and I began training on May 1st was my training start date in 2006. So it was about 6 weeks from beginning to end for that experience. And I went through my 7.5 weeks of training and enjoyed every moment of it. I learned how to evacuate the plane. I learned how to move the bar cart. I learned how to open a champagne bottle. I learned how to deliver a baby, to which when I called my mother to tell her I learned how to deliver a baby today, she replied, "Wow, it takes most people 7 years to learn that, and they're called doctors." But that was something that we learned. And I really had an amazing time and met a lot of amazing people. Once I graduated, I was based in Washington, D.C., and we were on call for the three main airports in Washington, D.C. So I was on reserve, on call for Dulles, Washington, Reagan, DCA, as well as Baltimore, BWI. So I was on call for all 3 of those. I rented a house with about 9 of my classmates in Reston, Virginia, drove my car up to Virginia, and I wasn't a commuter. I really did move into this house with all of these other people that I had just met in training. A week into my first trip, this is always fun to talk about. My first trip was to Germany. I got to go to Frankfurt, Germany. I was the only reserve on this flight. We were on a 747, and there were about 17 flight attendants. I was the only reserve, which means I was the only new hire. I was the only new person on the flight. I'll never forget, though, the purser, who is the lead flight attendant. The purser said in the briefing, he said, "I know you're new, but this is not rocket science. We are just slinging hash and picking up trash. And if you can remember that, you're going to have a great trip." And I did have a great trip. The next week, I was on call. Again, I was on reserve, and I was on what every airline has a little bit of a different way that they do reserve. The reserve line that I held was one where the night before I was to be on call, I was required to call and listen to a recording that crew scheduling would have left in this voicemail thing that I could either get an assignment for the next day, or you would sometimes be released. And I was actually released 2 days in a row. And then the 3rd day that I was getting ready to be on reserve, I called. Now, we had to call after 7 p.m. That's when we were required to call. After 7 p.m., you would call and listen to crew scheduling's little voicemail for you. Now, sometimes, though, they would call earlier and get your voicemail in and assign you a trip earlier than 7 o'clock. And so if you called at like 6:30, you could hear your recording and then get ready for your day the next day. That's what I did. I called at about 6:27. I called and listened to my recording, and I actually had a trip the next day out of Baltimore, which I lived in near Dulles at the time, which was about an hour 45 or so from Baltimore. Most of our trips were flown out of Dulles, so they recommended we live near Dulles, but this trip that I got was out of Baltimore. So the next morning I woke up, I had a 6 o'clock showtime. I woke up, I left the house about 4:30 so that I could get there in time. No, I didn't leave at 4:30 if it was 6 o'clock. I left at 3:30. I left about 2.5 hours before I was supposed to be there. So I left at 3:30. I remember it was pretty much nighttime driving there. The traffic was pretty easy because it was pretty much nighttime. I got to Baltimore. I got to the crew room. I found the crew room, and I went to the computer to check in. And when I pulled up my schedule, it looked strange. And it actually had it said a 7:15 show time, and I couldn't figure out what it was. So I asked a flight attendant sitting next to me, I said, "I don't understand this trip. This isn't the trip that they were assigned to me." And she looked at it and she went, "Oh my gosh, your trip is out of Dulles. You're in the wrong airport." And so what I later found out had happened was right before 7 p.m., there had been a sick call into crew scheduling, and they had changed my trip. And so because I had called at 6:30 and gotten the first assignment and not called back after 7, I was actually working on old information. And so I was at Baltimore, and I should have been at Dulles, back an hour and 45 minutes away. So it was before 6 o'clock. I had a 7:15 showtime. I had about an hour and a half to get there. So I said, I'm going to try it. I'm going to see what I can do. I called crew scheduling. I told them what happened, and they were like, "Oh, okay, well, let us know if you make it." So I actually ran outside. I got in a cab, which was very expensive, but easier, but faster than going to ride the shuttle back to the parking lot to get my car, to drive to park, to get on the other shuttle. So I was at least trying to do the best that I could to get there on time, to get there as fast as possible. I got in a cab. I drove an hour and a half, hour, 45-minute cab drive back to Dulles, got dropped off. But by then they had already replaced me with on call with a hot reserve, airport alert flight attendant, and I had missed my trip. So I went to my supervisor's office crying. I was devastated. I was mortified. I was sad. I was heartbroken. Talked with my supervisor about it. He said, okay, I understand what happened. It sounds like an honest mistake. Type up for us exactly what happened. We'll review it and we'll decide, what's going to happen. So I did that, and I actually was on call for another week. I got to go to San Francisco. I got to go to LA. I got and I got to get all within time that they were making a decision as to my fate for missing this trip. When I came back from Amsterdam and I went back to the crew room to check out, I had a note that my supervisor wanted to see me. So I went into the supervisor's office. Let me back up. So when I got that note, I knew that I was probably going to be terminated. And I was not the first person in my class that was terminated, even though we were about 3 weeks on the line at that point. It was not going to surprise me if that was the choice that they made, because that seemed to be more consistent with the way that they treated these sorts of situations. And I'll never forget that I had heard that they'll take my manual and my wings if I was terminated. I took my wings off of my dress because I had earned them 3 weeks earlier, and I still remembered how hard I had worked to get that pair of shiny wings and how powerful it was when I had been given them by my instructor. And I thought, you know what, if he asks me for my wings, I'm just going to lie. And I'm going to tell him that I lost them or I don't have them. But there's no way I'm letting them take these wings away from me. So he actually didn't end up asking, so I didn't have to lie, but I was prepared in that moment. So I went in and my supervisor said, I'm sorry, this is the end of the line for you, or something along those lines. I did have to turn in my badge and my manual, and then he booked me a flight home to Charleston. I will never forget walking down the hallway at the Charleston airport and seeing both my parents at the end of the hallway right outside of the TSA checkpoint. And they were standing there. My mom is crying. My dad's trying not to cry. I'm crying. I'd cried the whole flight back. And I'm just dragging my new crew luggage. I'm still wearing my uniform, wingless, because I had them off. And I'll never forget the way that felt. And I'll never forget the way that looked. And I'll never forget how hopeless I felt and how disappointed I was in myself and how frustrated I was that I had let this happen, and how much I just was so upset with myself that I had my dream and that I had made a decision that had caused me to lose my dream. And I'll never forget that feeling. The next day I woke up, though, and I knew that I wanted to be a flight attendant. That had not changed. If anything, that experience had shown me how much I was meant to be a flight attendant, that I had found the thing that I was meant to do. And so I wasn't going to let this stop me. And I started to apply again. And I started to apply with everyone who was hiring at the time. Like I said, this was 2006. We are now in about August 2006. If you're keeping up the timeline, late July, early August. I remember interviewing with Republic and being offered a job. I interviewed with SkyWest and was offered a job. I interviewed with a couple other small airlines and was offered positions. At the time, I made the choice to go to training with Republic. I accepted that position. That felt like that met my needs at the time the best. And then I had the opportunity to interview with Continental Airlines before my Republic training date came along. And I went through a very similar interview as to United, but this time it was in Houston. This is before the two companies merged, in case that's confusing to you. So I interviewed with Continental in Houston and was offered opportunity to go to training right then, right there the spot was offered the job. And that is when everything, of course, made a 360 and I was back pointed on the path where I was supposed to go. So I let Republic know that I would be withdrawing from that training class. And it was several weeks before I got my training date for Continental. And I actually started training on my 25th birthday, October 9th in 2006. I had the opportunity to start training that day. And I flew for Continental for a couple years and I met my husband. He actually worked for Continental at the time too. And once we got married, though, my commute changed. Jason, my husband's career changed. He left aviation and he went into the restaurant industry. We moved to Memphis. My commute to Newark was almost impossible. And I was newly married, and honestly, being newly married was very, very, very hard. For some people, that first year is that amazing honeymoon, and for others, it is like, please don't let me mess this whole thing up. Maybe I don't even know what I'm doing, kind of thing. It was not a great first year of marriage, I'll just be honest. And I felt like I needed to be home and be centered and really kind of like give this a go before the marriage all dissolved. That was, of course, 12 years ago. We're still married. So it worked, but I still am sad that I gave up that Continental career, or that I felt like that was the choice that I needed to make. I'm happy for the outcome since then, but that was really, really, really hard for me to do. And I wish that I hadn't had to do that. But that is what life looks like sometimes. Sometimes you have to make tough choices. The next thing that I did was I got a job working back in retail, and I had a really great experience, met some really fun girls again, had a really great team, but my heart was still being called into aviation. And so I started applying again in late 2008, early 2009 to try to get back into aviation. That was when that was the last time that the economy had tanked, and aviation was again struggling, just like it is struggling now. There was not a lot of opportunity like there had been 18 months, 2 years before that. There was not a lot of opportunity, and I was forced to get a little bit more creative this time. So I didn't even know a lot about regional airlines. I had interviewed with a couple before. I had commuted on ExpressJet when I worked for Continental every week. But I didn't know all of the regionals. I didn't know who they partner with, how it works. I didn't know all the stuff. So, but those were the only real opportunities that I had at that time. So I remember starting to research and asking my husband and Googling and Wikipedia and trying to find out all the different airlines and then going to their websites and applying. And I ended up interviewing with American Eagle, that is now Envoy, but back then it was called American Eagle. And I was offered a job that day on the spot to come to a training class, and I was given a training date, and I was so excited. I was going to probably be based in Dallas, which we maybe would move. It wasn't that far from Memphis, all things considered, and I thought it was going to be a really, really great opportunity. I was very excited. But the economy continued to collapse even further, and that training date was canceled. And then after 180 days, my offer actually expired. But during that time, because I knew that aviation was kind of fickle, I was continuing to apply. I also interviewed with Air Wisconsin. I was unsuccessful in that interview because I know exactly why. Because the recruiter emailing or interviewing me, she said, "Why do you want to work for Air Wisconsin?" Fair question. And I said, "Oh, I would love to work for Air Wisconsin because I've heard so many great things about Air Wisconsin." She said, "Oh, wow, what have you heard?" And I had never heard anything really about Air Wisconsin, good or bad. I had really not much opinion about them, and I had not done my research, and I had not learned or talked to people who work there or even done any research to have an answer for her. And I know when she asked that follow-up question, "Oh, what have you heard?" it showed on my face that I was just sort of making up, "Oh, I've always heard such great things about you," was not actually the truth. And she sort of called my bluff. And that was the moment that the interview turned. I learned a ton from that interview. Hopefully you just learned something from me sharing my experience with you. The next thing that happened though was just about 2 weeks after that, I had an interview with PSA Airlines. I was successful in that interview. I went to training with them. I had an amazing experience. Part of my story, what's kind of cool about it now looking back, even though there was a lot of pain and heartache during the story, I love the fact that what I do now, which is help people become flight attendants, I've had the opportunity to work for a regional and to fly mainline, both of them. And so that has really given me a really cool, broader experience in aviation than I would have had if I had only done one or the other. So I'm really thankful for both experiences. I was very, very, very happy working for PSA. I was extremely happy. It was not, we didn't have any Paris overnights, but I really, really enjoyed working with them. I enjoyed being a flight attendant again more than anything. That was what was making me happy. I had great flight benefits. My husband and I got to travel a little bit because we had U.S. Airways benefits. This was back before U.S. Airways and American merged. And so I got to do some cool things. I also got to become an instructor for them, which was a really neat opportunity too that I got because I was at a smaller company. I probably wouldn't have been able to become a trainer or an instructor within a year and a half at Continental, which is a much bigger company. So at the end of the day, that's my story. I just wanted to kind of lay it all out there. That's who I am. That's my story. Like I said before, in 2011, I had my first baby, and that's when I decided to hang up my wings for a little while. And then in 2013, I started Flight Attendant Career Connection. And I've had the opportunity to just really help people and hopefully inspire people. And I've definitely had the opportunity to stay connected to the industry I love, aviation, and the career I love, which is the flight attendant profession. So that is a little bit about me. And that is the whole story from beginning to end. Now it's time for us to talk about your story. All right, so here we go, diving in. Let's get started. Get your pens out, get your paper out. It is time to start taking notes. It is time to start learning. I'm just going to quickly pop over into got some hey girls. Okay, here we go. All right, ladies and gentlemen, here we go. We're going to start with some flight attendant myths because before we get to the actions, I would like to build a little bit of a foundation, make sure we are all on the same page, and make sure that, and I'm going to debunk some very common myths that I hear that are frustrating to me. And then I'm also going to tell you a couple of things that are true that I don't think enough people know. And then we are going to go through our five actions. Here we go. Myth number 1. I am too old. I am too heavy to become a flight attendant. This one is really common. And the reason that it's really common is because it was not always a myth. It was actually reality for the majority of the flight attendant / stewardess profession. So until when the flight attendant profession started in the early 30s with Ellen Church, you had to be unmarried, have a nursing degree, certain height. I don't know off the top of 2 inches variance as far as your height goes, and they weighed you, couldn't have children, couldn't be married, had to be a nurse. Then during World War II, they dropped the nursing requirement because so many nurses were working on the war, were working with the war, fighting the war. So that's when that stopped. But for a long time, they kept the weight restrictions, the age restrictions, the needing to be unmarried restriction, the needing to not have children restriction. They kept those restrictions for a long time. I remember flying at Continental with a lady who had been a flight attendant and had lost her job and then when she had a child, and then had been part of the lawsuit to allow for women to have children and still be flight attendants, and she had won her job back, and she was still flying in 2006. So that shows you it really wasn't that long ago. The last flight attendant was weighed in 1997, which also wasn't that long ago. So this myth of I'm too old or too heavy is common because it was the truth for a long time. But I am here to say, thank the good Lord above, it is no longer the reality for United States-based airlines. Now, all of this information is for commercial aviation in the United States. Here in the United States, there's no age limit or weight requirements as far as becoming a flight attendant. Now, for age, this is not just lip service. It's not like, oh, there's no requirement, but they don't hire old people. That is absolutely not the truth. The majority of my clients that I've worked with are 45 to 65-year-olds, women, actually, most of them, and they have been able to be successful as a second or even third career, getting hired as a flight attendant with no experience, or they flew back in the day, had their family and are going back. You know, there's all different types of ways that they have made it to that point, but with or without flight attendant experience into your 40s, 50s, 60s is totally fine. I actually saw a post probably about a year ago now that was shared in the Facebook group about an Alaska Airlines flight attendant who he was celebrating his 11-year anniversary with Alaska, and he had been hired at age 70. So he was now 81, still flying, still got it, but he was hired at 70 years old. So age is not a consideration. If you've been worried that you're too old, stop. Please worry about something else. This one is not one worth worrying about. Now let's talk about weight. There are no weight requirements. True. There are some body shape guidelines, though. Specifically, you need to be able to fit in the jump seat without an extension. You need to be able to fit down the aisle easily. You need to be able to fit out the overwing exit, okay? So even though there's no weight requirements anymore, there are some size requirements. A good rule of thumb for women is about a size 18 or smaller. You should be totally fine. Now, everyone kind of carries their weight a little bit differently, but that is just a kind of a ballpark guiding rule of thumb for that. I also share out of transparency because I like numbers and I like to hear the facts. I don't like to hear, oh, don't worry about it, they don't matter. I like to hear numbers. That's why I use size 18. Also, when I was hired as a flight attendant for the first time, I was wearing a size 12. And when I was hired by PSA, I was wearing a size 14 suit. So neither one of those are considered small or svelte or skinny or thin sizes for the most part. So I only share that because I want you to know that it is really true that you can get hired and not be young and thin, if that's something that you've been worried about. So that's the first myth. The second myth, flight attendant school will help me get hired. That is not true. Your airline, once you are hired, your airline will teach you every single thing that you need to know, and they will teach you the way they want you to know it. And that is very important to know, that they will teach you the way that they want you to know it. So going to flight attendant school, so I'm not talking about interview prep, I'm not talking about reading books, I'm not talking about like taking a class like this that's helping you with your interview. I'm talking about paying the money to go to a flight attendant school that tells you they will teach you how to become a flight attendant. These are unnecessary, they are a waste of money, they are not a good investment. And besides that, they are also not a good idea because they will teach you how to become a flight attendant. It's very similar to the flight attendant training that your airline will teach you, but it's not exactly the same because you don't know which airline you're going to get hired by. For example, every airline has evacuation commands that you yell if you are evacuating the aircraft. Sounds something like this. Come this way, jump and slide, get away from the plane. Come this way, jump and slide, get away from the plane. But depending on your airline, it might be a little bit different. You may say, depending on the aircraft type, come this way, down the stairs, get away from the plane, if you don't have a slide. Now, if you have learned at flight attendant school about a slide and you're now working for a carrier that has stairs and you are trying to unmemorize your commands and then rememorize your new commands, that will make training extremely more difficult than it had to be in the first place. Now, it's not that you can't do it because I just told you a story where I went to 2 different flight attendant trainings within months of each other and was successful both times. So it's not like this is something that will stop your career. But going to flight attendant school will not help you, and it could make it harder for you to pass training. The nicest thing I have ever heard anyone say about flight attendant schools, this is the nicest thing they've ever said. I've heard lots of bad things, lots of bad experiences. The nicest thing I've ever heard is, it didn't help me, but I enjoyed it. So really, so it's not something that you should do. It can make it harder. It will not help you. It doesn't mean that when you go, it will be a miserable experience. This person enjoyed going, but they did not feel like it was helpful. And flight attendant schools cost thousands of dollars. So it's a very, very big investment for something that could hurt you in training and will not help you in the interview. Now, this answer too, I just want to make sure that we're all clear and on the same page, is for commercial aviation, not corporate aviation. If you would like to consider becoming a corporate or a private flight attendant, those flight attendants work mostly as freelancers, and so you will get your certification before you start putting yourself out there and applying for positions. But that is only for corporate, and it's not flight attendant school, it's corporate flight attendant training. It's a different program. So the program I'm talking about is not this program. These flight attendant schools will not help you in commercial and will not certify you for corporate. Okay, so that's kind of what we're talking about. All right, moving on to the next one. The third myth that I hear is, I don't have the right experience, or I don't have any experience as a flight attendant, or I don't have any aviation experience, or I've been a stay-at-home mom for 17 years and I have zero experience, which is not really true, but that's how people feel. I don't have the right experience. Look, y'all, I went over with my story that the required qualifications are very basic. If you have 2 to 3 years of customer service experience at any point in any form, from Burger King to Walmart to Nordstrom to high-end restaurant to serving your internal customers in the accounting department, you have customer service experience. More than likely, if you want to be a flight attendant, your personality has always drawn you to jobs where you're helping people. So the experience, more than likely, you have the right experience. It's just about seeing the value in your experience and pulling out the relevant parts of your experience so you can use them in your interviews. Airlines hire for personality and then they train for skill. They do not hire for skill. That is important. Write it down. Airlines hire for personality and they train for skill. So if you're thinking, I don't have the right experience, let me ask you, do you have the right personality? Yes, ma'am. All right, great. That's what they're looking for. They'll teach you what you need to know in training. Next one, flight attendants don't make any money. Oh, so this one is a little bit tricky one. I think that it's a myth because, I see posts like this in the Facebook group a lot, and a lot of times there's something like, do flight attendants make decent money? But these questions are so relative to who you are, what your background is, how much you make now, what you consider a lot, what you consider decent, that to say flight attendants don't make any money is a myth, because flight attendants make money, they get paid. Now, it's not one of the most high-paying jobs. We can all agree on that, because if we compare them to other careers, you could find another career where you make more money. But to say flight attendants don't make any money is absolutely not true. Now, it could be your reality that you are going to need to take a pay cut to become a flight attendant, but it also could be the situation where you're not taking a pay cut to be a flight attendant. You are getting a pay raise when you become a flight attendant. It just depends on where you are. The thing about becoming a flight attendant is the flight attendant career is a lifestyle. And I like to say that flight attendants, baby, don't make bank, but they do make benefits. You're going to get flight benefits. You're going to get your health insurance. You're going to get your flexibility, all sorts of different things. And we're actually going to talk a lot more about that later. But to say flight attendants don't make any money at all is not the truth, because it's relative. Now, I like numbers because I already told you that I do. So I'm going to give you some numbers. You can expect to make as a flight attendant at a regional carrier anywhere from $18,000 to $24,000 your first year. If you end up with a bigger carrier with a higher starting rate and a higher number of guaranteed hours on reserve, you could expect to make anywhere from $21,000 to $28,000 your first year. That is before per diem. You can expect to make, if you're flying a lot, $10,000 a year in per diem. If you're not flying a lot, of course, that could go down all the way to zero. It probably wouldn't be zero, but it could decrease. These are just round numbers. Every single person's first year of flying is different because it depends on how much you end up getting worked by crew scheduling, whether or not your airline allows you to pick up on your days off, what the minimum days off guarantee is, what the minimum hours of work is, how much you make per flight hour, if you have holding pay or override pay. Like there's so many different little nuances within each airline that it's hard to say this is how much flight attendants make. And you will see people who make 16 in their first year, and you'll have people that I made 39,000 my first year. So, nobody's making 100,000 their first year, but those numbers are good estimations because everything is relative. A lot of money is relative, right? Saying a lot of money is relative. All right, next. Here we go. Flight attendant truths. Good. So now that we're done with all of the yucky myths, let's talk about some truths. First of all, the first truth that aspiring flight attendants sometimes don't know is that no matter who you work for, you will have benefits that allow you to travel the world. If you didn't know that before, I think that we should all be saying a hallelujah to this one because that is really freaking cool. No matter who you work for, you will have benefits that allow you to travel the world. So if you say, I want to work for Delta because I want to visit Asia, well, you can visit Asia with your flight benefits from any airline. Now, you may not work flights everywhere. So if you work for a regional or an airline that's mostly domestic, you will not work flights to Europe, but you will still have flight benefits where on vacation and on your days off, you can still get to these places for free or for almost free. I want to tell you a story about a girl. Her name is Sheila. She was a client of mine. She was working for Mesa Airlines when we first started working together because she'd been with them for a couple of years. She was looking to take her career to the next level. And she actually now flies for Alaska. But while we were working together, she was at Mesa. And she told me she would go on these amazing trips and we became Facebook friends. So then I could see her pictures, which was really cool. But every month, her and her friends would get together and they would move their schedules around. So they would have a block of time, a week, 2 weeks off, and they would go on an epic trip every month. We're talking Dubai, we're talking Turkey, we're talking all over the world. She was a Mesa regional flight attendant. She traveled the world on her Mesa flight benefits. She's been way more places than I've been, and I was an international flight attendant working international trips for a mainline carrier. So it's all about the choices that you make, but you will have the benefits, the same flight benefits. Now, the actual nuances of each airline's flight benefits do change a little bit. Sometimes you have to pay a little tiny bit to get a ticket. Sometimes your parents have to pay a little tiny bit. Sometimes you'll have to pay the taxes, or sometimes you'll have to pay more for first class. So there's these little tiny nuances, but if your goal is to join aviation, if one of your goals is to be able to travel the world as a non-revenue passenger, seeing the world, your flight benefits, who you work for will not change your opportunities much as to your ability to travel the world. The next truth is there is no airline that is the best airline, but there is a best airline out there for you. This question is super popular in the Facebook group, which is why I know most people don't know the truth. Which airline is the best? Are there any good airlines hiring right now? Who should I apply for? Which one is the best? Are there any that are good? Are there any better than others? Which one is the worst? All these kind of questions. There is no best airline. There is a best airline for you. The reason there is no one best airline is because we all have different goals. We all have different lifestyles, different backgrounds, different situations. Some people want to be based on the East Coast. Some people want to be based on the West Coast. Some people want to be able to commute to here or there. Some people don't want to be in the snow. Some people want to be in the sun. Some people, there's just so many different things. Some people want to work all the time. Some people want as much flexibility to have time off as possible. There's so many different nuances to every person's situation that there's no such thing as a best airline. There's a best airline for you. There also could be a best airline for you today and a different best airline for you in 3 years. This is very, very especially true. That was a bad sentence, but this is very, very especially true right now. Right now, we are limited as to our opportunities. There are not a lot of airlines accepting applications. There are a couple. There are not a lot of airlines hiring. There are a couple sending out video interviews, but there is no one training flight attendants, and there is very little opportunity. Now, I imagine that over the next couple months, some of those things will change, and we may see a little bit more opportunity, but it will be several years. I don't think it's going to be a ton of years, but it could be a couple years before some of these mainline carriers, Delta, United, American, Southwest, start hiring again. Now, I don't have a crystal ball, so I don't know for sure, but I do imagine that some of the smaller airlines, there's an airplane, will be hiring sooner than some of the other larger airlines. And so for right now, your best airline, maybe a small airline, a regional airline that has a base city in a city that you love, while you wait for your next opportunity to apply for an interview with the next best airline that you have, that would be next best for you, the next best one, the goal one, the big one, okay, the big boy one. So even though there's no best airline, there is a best airline for you, and that could actually change depending on how your situation changes. Now, I was asked a question. This is a quick side note. I'm probably going to do a full video on it, but I was asked this week in study hall, how do you deal with sort of like the guilt of taking a job with an airline that was not your first choice because your first choice is not hiring? And I just encouraged her by saying, as long as you give that airline 100%, as long as you serve those passengers 100%, as long as you treat that airline and you treat those passengers with your top customer service and you serve them fully from your heart, then you are not being unethical to accept a position with an airline that is maybe not your first choice. As long as you give 100% while you are there and you don't treat them like they're second best, then you should have no guilt working for them and giving your best while you're employed with them, and then moving on to a better opportunity for you if a better opportunity for you presents itself. Okay. Let's go on to the next one. Number 3, there is a better statistical probability that you will be accepted into Harvard. Okay, so this one actually is kind of a well-known truth, but I think most people think it's a myth. So that's why it made the list. There is a better statistical probability that you will be accepted into Harvard than you will be able to secure a flight attendant position. So the place that this statistic comes from is they did a study. Somebody ran the numbers. Somebody did a study. Somebody ran the numbers of the number of people who applied to Harvard versus the number of people accepted. And that was a higher percentage so accepted applicants is a higher percentage at Harvard than accepted applicants at Delta Airlines. So if you compare the number of people who apply to be a Delta Airlines flight attendant versus the number of people who actually get hired, that percentage is smaller than the number of people who apply to Harvard and get accepted. So that's why you'll say people sometimes say it's easier to get into Harvard than it is to become a Delta flight attendant. That's not exactly the right wording, but there is this better statistical probability that if you applied to Harvard and you applied to Delta, that you would be hired, that you would get into Harvard, which is kind of crazy. But that's not to say that there are still opportunities. There are still opportunities to become a flight attendant. Delta, probably not for a couple years, but if you would like to become a flight attendant over the next 18 months, there will be opportunities for you to apply and you to interview, and hopefully for you to become a flight attendant if you're successful at that area. So even though the statistic is kind of a funny one, it's not to discourage you. It's just kind of a funny fact. And the reason I want you all to know that is because I believe that you will all reach your goal. And so I want you to know this statistic, because when you are offered a job to become a flight attendant, the first time you are offered that position and then you are invited to training, whether you decide to move forward with it or not, You should be freaking proud because you just accomplished a goal that is harder than the goal of getting into Harvard. So no matter what happens, when you get that first CJO, you can tell yourself, man, I'm proud of myself. That was a freaking hard thing to do. Not everybody gets to do that. So that's why I want you to know the statistic. And number 4, if you have a desire to become a flight attendant, that is not a whim. I don't believe that it is an accident. If your heart is pulling you towards the flight attendant career, it's hard to become a flight attendant. It's hard to be a flight attendant. There are definitely benefits, and I believe it is worth what you have to put into it, but it is not something that you accidentally do and that you accidentally stay in. It is a complete lifestyle change for you and your loved ones. And so if you are being drawn to the flight attendant position and you feel like you can make a difference, I believe that that is not an accident and it's not just like a whim. Especially want you to know that right now because the opportunities have shriveled up. And maybe you're thinking, maybe I misheard my heart. Maybe I misheard the Lord. Maybe I misheard the universe. Maybe you start to doubt yourself. You're starting to not trust your intuition that was drawing you in this direction. And I want to make sure that I tell you that it is not an accident and it is not a fluke that you thought that you wanted to be a flight attendant. As a flight attendant, you will have the opportunity to change the course of someone's day. If you want to be a flight attendant, I believe that you need to work until you reach that goal because there will come a moment where you will be in the right place at the right time and your destiny will line up with someone else's destiny and you will be able to either change their day, affect the outcome of a situation. You will be able to celebrate with those who are celebrating. You will be able to comfort those who grieve. You will be in the right place at the right time. You have to continue to work towards this goal because I believe there are people out there who need you on the aircraft. And for some of you, not all of you, but for some of you, you will literally be in a position to save another human being's life because you are on the right place at the right time on the right airplane because you did not give up your dream of becoming a flight attendant. And you were able to not just make a difference in someone's day, but literally save their life. And that is why I feel so strongly about this career. And this is why I feel so strongly about helping people reach their flight attendant goals. All right, guys. Flight attendants, prepare for takeoff. Here we go. Here's our 5 actions. So hopefully you learned something during the myths. Hopefully you learned something during the truths. Hopefully maybe even you're looking at something that you thought you knew in a new way. I hope that maybe I got the juices flowing, and especially since we're in a low opportunity time, that will be changing. Over the next couple weeks, next couple months, we'll be able to have a clearer picture of what's going to happen. Every day we're learning new information. I was kind of holding out hope that, oh no, everyone's going to be fine. But, I don't know that everyone will be fine eventually. But, I do think that it's going to be a while before we're back in a place where we have a lot of opportunity. We've been really lucky for the last several years where there've been a lot of flight attendant opportunity. And now we're kind of back in that 2008, 2009 feeling where there's not as much opportunity. But that doesn't mean that we can't use this time to prepare and that we should give up on our flight attendant dreams. So that's why we're all here today. All right. Number 1, flight attendants prepare for takeoff. Let's do number 1. Non-negotiable action to prepare your flight attendant career for takeoff. Number 1 is you must understand what a flight attendant really does. I remember in that Republic interview that I was telling you about earlier that I was actually interviewed by the director of human resources, director of recruiting. And she asked me, do you think being a flight attendant is a glamorous job? And I answered by saying, I think that it's glamorous to tell people you're a flight attendant, but the day-to-day work of a flight attendant is not always glamorous. There's a lot of hard work and there's a lot of responsibility. And I remember her face lit up and she said, that's the best answer I've ever heard, which was partly luck and partly just me speaking from the heart. But that's kind of always stuck with me because I thought that it was a really unique question. First of all, is the flight attendant job glamorous? And until that moment, I had never really thought about the ins and outs of it. And, it definitely is true to tell people it's glamorous to tell people you're a flight attendant. I mean, I was young and single when I became a flight attendant. So telling guys at a bar that you were a flight attendant was like, free drinks for everybody, woohoo, kind of thing. So, I mean, then definitely it's fun to tell people you're a flight attendant in a lot of situations, but the actual day-to-day work of a flight attendant, I think we can all agree, is definitely goes way beyond glamour. So I thought that it would be fun if I told you a little story that basically would give you a really good picture of what the day in the life of a new flight attendant would look like. So when you become a new flight attendant, let's talk about this new flight attendant. So the day before she starts her reserve duty period, she packs her suitcase. She makes sure she has everything she needs. She checks her uniform, makes sure it's hanging up, it's ready to go. She makes sure that her pantyhose are out and that her shoes are ready. She knows where her badge is. She packs her food bag for 4 days, puts it in the fridge just so that it's ready to go, just in case she gets called. She goes to bed kind of early because she doesn't know when she's going to get that phone call or if she's going to get that phone call. About 4 a.m., her phone rings. She answers it. Hello. They say, hello, this is crew scheduling. Can I please speak to Flight Attendant Sumner? She says, this is she, and she gets her trip. The crew scheduler says something like, you have a 8:45 a.m. show time, 0845 show time, and I'm going to put your trip in your on your schedule. Have a great trip. She says, thank you. Takes a look at the clock and realizes that she could go back to sleep for an hour or so, but phone call at 4 a.m. kind of wakes everybody up. It's hard to go back to sleep. So she gets up, she makes her breakfast, checks her bag again, gets dressed, heads to the airport. She gets there early because she couldn't go back to sleep. She has time to stop by Starbucks. She gets to Starbucks and she heads down to the crew room to check in. She checks in with the duty desk, lets them know that she's there. She checks her V file, which is her vertical file. It's a file where there may be different communication from the company. She checks that. Maybe she even got a little note from someone she flew with before that was just thinking about her and popped a note in her V file. Then she goes and prints out her schedule. She makes sure that she has her, nowadays, everybody has a tablet-y thing, or a lot of airlines do. She makes sure that she has her tablet, everything is charged, everything's ready to go. And then she heads up to her gate, and she gets there a few minutes earlier than she needs to be. She's the first flight attendant there, so she sits down in the boarding area. A couple other flight attendants walk up, and she introduces herself. She's going to be working a 4-day trip with them. They sort of talk. If it's a good trip, the flight attendants will say, how'd you get this trip? Because they're shocked that a reserve is on it. They have a little talk, they have a little chat, kind of get to know each other a little bit. The gate agent comes over, unlocks the door, lets them down the jet bridge. She goes on board, she stows her bag in its assigned spot. There's a special spot for her suitcase. She stows that, and then she begins to do her responsibilities. So based on the position that she's working in the aircraft that she's working, she checks her emergency equipment, she checks her galley, she checks for supplies, she checks the cabin just to make sure everything looks like it's in place and everything is ready to go. When it's time for boarding, the gate agent will let the flight attendants know. One of the flight attendants will make an announcement over the PA, boarding. And when she hears that, she goes to her boarding position. She stands in her boarding position. She welcomes customers, answers questions, smiles, collects trash, helps people find spots for their bags, answers some more questions, collects some more trash. She kind of hangs out and just doesn't hang out. She creates sort of a welcoming atmosphere where she's just there interacting with her passengers. Once everyone is boarded and it's time to go, if she's on an aircraft where she needs to arm her door, she will arm her door at the appropriate time, which means she will engage the evacuation slide. So if she needs to open the door and do an emergency evacuation, her slide is ready to deploy. So she'll arm her door. That's what that means. And then she will do the safety demo, or she'll stand in her safety demo position while the safety demo plays on the video screen. And then she'll do a couple more walkthroughs, making sure that she's answering questions, everyone's buckled up, bags are stowed, collecting more trash, little more trash, and then it's time to take off. When the captain communicates that it's time for them to take the jump seats to take off, she'll get in her jump seat. She'll get in her brace position, which depending on where her jump seat is and which direction it's facing, it varies. So she'll get in the appropriate brace position. After that, as soon as she's in her brace position, she'll do her 30-second review. A 30-second review is before every takeoff and every landing. A flight attendant will go over what she would do if there was an evacuation. She thinks about her door. She thinks about the commands she would yell at that door. She thinks about the direction that the handle turns. And she thinks about who is nearby her that could help her. So she does a quick 30-second review where she's thinking about what she would do if there was an evacuation. So it's fresh in her mind. After takeoff, easy takeoff, obviously, no evacuation today. After takeoff, she waits until it is time. Once they hit 10,000 feet, she hears a chime from the flight deck. She knows that it's safe to get up and prepare for beverage service. She does her beverage service. Depending on her airline, this could be different. She could be selling amenities. She could be serving drinks from a tray. She could have meals in the aisle. She could have a cart in the aisle. She could be doing several different things. So depending on her airline and how the service flow is designed for that leg of the trip, she will do her service to her passengers. She's still answering questions, smiling, and interacting with her passengers, of course, to create a enjoyable, safe, and memorable experience for them all. After she does her service, she will, guess what? Pick up trash. So she's going to go through and pick up trash. She might have a little bit of time, if it's a longer flight, to eat lunch at that point in the back galley from something that she's packed. If it's a shorter flight, she wouldn't really have time to eat. So she'll just have to eat when she gets done with that flight. Before landing, she'll walk back through the cabin again, making sure everyone is buckled up, that all those bags are restowed. She will also be picking up trash. And then she will secure her galley, make sure everything is buttoned up, everything is safe. When it's time to sit back in her jump seat for landing, she'll buckle in, assume her brace position, do her 30-second review, and then the plane will land. During deplaning, she will collect trash from people so that they don't leave it on the floor and in the seat back pocket. And she'll also thank them for flying, answer questions about connections or what this airport looks like, or just all sorts of random things. Do you fly this route often? Kind of thing. Now, today is a good day because it's just a one-leg day. So once everyone deplanes, she will tidy up. She'll collect her bag. She'll collect all of her belongings, and her and the crew will leave the flight, walk out through the airport to the curb, get in the crew van, and head off to the layover. During the crew van ride, hopefully she's with some really fun people that want to go out, and they'll make a plan to meet for lunch or for drinks or for sightseeing, depending on where they are and what the layover hotel is like. Since she's new, she'll probably also get tips about what time happy hour is in the hotel, and if we get a crew discount on food, and all sorts of other little things like that. Once you get to the hotel room, she'll check in. Flight attendants get their own rooms. And she'll check in, and then the rest of the day is hers until the next day when she goes and she works day 2 of her flight. So that's a little bit about what a day in the flight attendant, day in the life of a flight attendant looks like. So basically her day is all about solving problems, keeping safety as a priority, working as a member of a team, and providing excellent customer service. Above all, she is also collecting trash. But you know what? Collecting trash, I make a joke about it, but really that is providing excellent customer service. It's also safety so that the floors are not littered. There's so much that goes into it. It's a lot of collecting trash, but you know, if that's what's going to have someone, if you can smile at someone while you're doing it and it makes their day, then, you know, there's some value in that. All right, so that's a little bit about what a flight attendant really does for the day-to-day, for her day-to-day responsibilities. Now, when you are interviewing, you will be asked why you want to be a flight attendant. Almost every interview, you will be asked why you want to be a flight attendant. You know, a bad answer would be something like, because I love people and I love to travel, or I love to fly. These are not good answers. The reason that I wanted to go over what a flight attendant really does with you is because a good answer will come from someone who has really considered the day-to-day aspects of what a flight attendant does, and someone who understands what she does day in and day out, and then thinking about those responsibilities and thinking about those actions and thinking about what she's trying to do, providing a safe, comfortable, enjoyable, memorable customer service experience. Take from that how you think you would, why you think you would be good at it. What skills do you bring to the table that would allow you to accomplish that? And that is a much better reason as to why you want to be a flight attendant than because I think that it sounds fun. I think it sounds glamorous. I love to fly. I love people. I love travel. No, 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 no. What we want to do is understand what a flight attendant does and then how it relates to our experience, so we can tell the recruiter why we're going to be able to do what a flight attendant does really well, because that's what they want to know. They want to be why you want to be, they really want to know why you think you'd be good at being a flight attendant, or why you think that this is a career you'd be successful at. That is a better way to look at answering the question, why do you want to be a flight attendant? Because if you say, because my in-laws live in Paris and I don't want to pay for tickets anymore, that is not going to be something that a company wants in a flight attendant. Because even though that could be the truth, and that's okay if that's part of the truth, but what they really want to know is not how this job is going to benefit you, but how you are going to benefit the company when they give you the job. All right, number 2. Already on number 2. Here we go. Number 2, you must count the cost. So the second non-negotiable action is you must count the cost. So we already talked about how flight attendants don't necessarily make bank, but they do make benefits. And so this is when we start to really consider what that means and what that's going to mean for your life, your lifestyle, and your budget. So flight attendants have really good benefits. They have flight benefits, fly for free, standby, which means space available. If there's an empty seat, you can have it for free or for almost free on pretty much any carrier around the world. Almost any carrier around the world. You will get health insurance. You will have no take-home work. That is a benefit. If you have a job that you have goals, or you have take-home work, or you're at home working and there's never done, and you're never done, and you're never done, this job, one of the benefits of it is there is no take-home work. When you're done and you get on the hotel van, you're now talking about dinner and you're not worrying about work anymore. 401k, usually with a match. A lot of airlines will offer a match, and then profit sharing. So profit sharing means you get a percentage of the profits. Not every airline offers this, but a lot of them do. Now, of course, that only works if they have a profit. For the last several years, most airlines have been profitable, and so we have seen some really nice profit sharing checks come out to flight attendants and aviation employees. I don't know how it's going to look for next year, but the fact that we have it as an option, aviation will come back, and so profit sharing is still a nice benefit to have for when it is relevant. So even though you're not making a ton of money in the grand scheme of life, you're not making all the Benjamins, you do have a lot of benefits. I consider the flight attendant career as one that has really good ROI. ROI stands for return on investment. I feel like the investment that you put into it and the return that you get back is really good. Some companies, you make a lot of money, but you have to put in a lot. I mean, outside of aviation, some jobs you have to work a lot to make a lot of money. You have to hustle a lot to make a lot of money. You have to be on your phone all the time to make a lot of money. You've got to get deals, and you have a lot of heartbreak and gnashing of teeth to make a lot of money. The return on the investment maybe isn't as high, even though the return monetarily could be lower as a flight attendant. The amount of investment that you have to make I would consider a good return on investment. You get a lot for the job that you're doing. And this really is a lifestyle. I've said it a couple times. And just like every lifestyle, there are pros and there are cons. Some of the cons of the flight attendant lifestyle is holidays and birthdays are tricky. Now, if you read the Indeed, I see people say, you can forget celebrating a holiday, any holiday with your family for 15 years, and you're going to miss every birthday and every graduation and every wedding for the rest of your whole ever-loving life. That's not true. Yes, as a new flight attendant, you have a lot less control over your schedule than someone who has been a flight attendant for longer, because everything is seniority based. But you will not miss every single holiday for the whole rest of your career. That's not true. It may take a while for you to be home on Christmas. For some of y'all, that is actually going to go in the pro column, because we're okay not going home for our holidays. For some of you, it will be a con. But here's the thing. All you have to do is you reschedule that holiday. My husband's in aviation, even though he's not a flight attendant. 2 years ago, I had to email Santa, and I had to ask him if he would come a day earlier, because Jason, we were actually going to be traveling on Christmas Day. So I needed Santa to come on the 23rd if there was any way. And he actually emailed me back. And you may not know this, but he does try to spread out as much as he can around the week of Christmas, his deliveries, because that helps him to be more efficient on Christmas Eve night. So he actually sent me an email back so that I could let the children know that it was actually helpful for him to be able to come and deliver our presents on the night of the 23rd, and that we needed to be prepared for him, and that the presents would be there when they woke up on the 24th. So I was able to share that information with my children, and we were able to, put out our cookies and everything on the 23rd. Santa came the 23rd, which, like I said, was a benefit for him, y'all. And then we celebrated Christmas basically on the 24th, at least the Santa part of it. So you just have to kind of get creative as to celebrating holidays on different days. Very few of us really get to have our birthday on our birthday anymore anyways. Like usually it's that weekend or something. So you just have to get creative about it. Another con could be that this could be a con for you, is that your schedule is unknown. You don't know when you're going or where you're going. This unknown sometimes gives some people a little bit of pause, because they're like, I am just on call for 20 days, but I could go here or there. How do I pack my bag? And you'll learn, you'll get it. You'll become more go with the flow. And then, of course, as you get more seniority, you'll have more control over your schedule. But at first, it can be a little bit of a negative for some people that their schedule is unknown. Now let's talk about some pros. The first pro that I want to talk about is your freedom. You have freedom. You have a lot of freedom. Now, some people will say that you're owned by the airline when you're on reserve. And on your reserve days, you kind of are. But besides that, you have flight benefits. So you can go anywhere you want, see anyone you want, see the world, do your thing. You have freedom because you have flight benefits, and you also have a lot of freedom in your schedule. Now, your reserve days, yes, you have to go where they send you. Sometimes you get rolled into a day off. Sometimes it doesn't work out as perfectly as you want, but there really is nothing in life that works out perfectly. Like I was talking about Sheila working at Mesa, they were able to move their schedule around so that she could have 2 weeks off at a time and she could go to Turkey. I would call that freedom in a job. When, I mentioned before that we live in Hawaii and I have 3 children, there's 5 people in my family. Without flight benefits, we would not be able to go home and visit our family on the mainland very often. And we've been able to go several times. I think we've been back 3 times now. And we've been back for 3 weeks at a time, because even though my husband's not a flight attendant, he's in aviation, and he still has that same benefit of being able to move his schedule around and really control his schedule. And we've been able to go back. It would be too expensive for our family of 5 to buy airplane tickets from Honolulu to Charleston, South Carolina, for us to go back maybe even once a year. I don't even know if we could have done that. So flight benefits are huge. When Southwest first started, when they first started here in Hawaii, Honolulu, they had a big launch party, and my husband actually moved about a week and a half before me and the children did, because we were waiting for spring break. This was March last year, and they had a launch party. They had a party at a really fancy Hilton hotel. It's the one with the if you've ever seen like drone footage or pictures, or you watch Hawaii 5-0, it's the hotel that's really tall, and it has like the rainbow looking thing up the side. It's like a mosaic. It was at that hotel, that Hilton. And I really wanted to go. Now, my husband was here and I was still living in Charleston, but because we have flight benefits, I was able to fly over Thursday afternoon, go to the party on Friday, and then first thing Saturday morning, I flew home. So you don't get to go to Hawaii for 24, 48 hours if you don't have flight benefits. But that's something that is a really cool pro of being in aviation. Another thing is the flexibility. So even though you have an unknown schedule, which is a con, you also have a lot of flexibility, which is a pro. As a new flight attendant, you can expect to have anywhere from 10 to 15 days off a month. Now, in a regular job, if you work 5 days a week and you have 2 days off on the weekends, that's about 8 days a month off. 8 days a month off versus as a flight attendant, you start with about 10 days off a month, and it can go quickly up to 15 days a month or maybe even more. So there is a lot of flexibility there. And then the last pro I want to talk about is the ability to live anywhere. So you can commute. Commuting is hard, yes, but if you live in a city that doesn't have a crew base, or if you live in a city that doesn't have a crew base for the airlines that are hiring currently, you can live anywhere that you want to live. You just have to work a little bit harder to get the commute to work. But you do not have to pick up and move to New York City to become a flight attendant. You can commute from Raleigh or wherever you are. Okay, that was number 2. Count the cost. Hopefully you've learned a couple things that maybe are pros, maybe are cons, so that you can really consider the cost and make sure that before you become a flight attendant, this will prepare your flight attendant career for takeoff, that you've considered all of the pros and cons and you have contingencies for things that could be possible problems or roadblocks or speed bumps. Okay, number 3. Non-negotiable number 3. You must boost your confidence and expand your comfort zone. So becoming a flight attendant requires you to be really good at making yourself feel more confident when you need it and expanding your comfort zone so that you, because every time you go outside of your comfort zone expands. Okay, so your comfort zone is a certain size right now. If you do something right outside that comfort zone, you've now just grown your comfort zone. I learned this from Kelsey Humphreys, motivational comedian. If you go outside your comfort zone, it just grew. Okay, so growing your comfort zone. Right now, some of y'all have never been outside of the United States. The first time you go outside the United States as a flight attendant, your comfort zone's now bigger. You're comfortable going in and out of Canada and out of Mexico. But right now your comfort zone is small. So you have to get comfortable with the fact that you're going to be expanding your comfort zone. The number one reason people are unsuccessful in their interview is a lack of confidence. You might want to write that down. Based on my experience, based on talking to thousands of people, based on years of helping people reach their flight attendant goals, I can tell you that the number one reason people are unsuccessful during their interview is a lack of confidence. It is not a lack of experience. It's not that they don't look the part. It's not that they're not smart enough. It's not that they would not be a fantastic flight attendant. None of those are reasons why they are unsuccessful. The number one reason they are not successful in their interview is because they did not have the confidence to shine and let their recruiter see what a great flight attendant they would be. So there are several common confidence busters. Nerves, feeling nervous, not being able to control your nerves, not being experienced in interviewing. Maybe you haven't interviewed in a long time. Maybe all of your jobs you've gotten on a referral. Maybe you've only had very perfunctory interviews in the past and nothing that was a very formal interview like you're getting ready to do for the flight attendant career. Maybe you have past failures and regrets whispering in your ear during the interview, reminding you why you don't deserve to be there. That is a confidence buster. Maybe the way you look is busting your confidence. Maybe you don't love the suit that you have to wear to your interview. Maybe you do feel like that you look old. Maybe you don't feel like you're pretty enough. Maybe you wish that you had worn your hair back like everybody else. The way you look can bust your confidence. And then the last thing that I want to address is the way you sound. The way you sound. I mostly hear this from people who speak English as their second language, and their accent makes them feel less confident than if they did not have an accent, and they are nervous that the recruiter will not be able to understand them. They're nervous that they will be that there will be a bias against them because they have a background outside of the United States, and they let that, the way that they sound, it busts their confidence. They're worried about it. And I do want to address this one quickly. If you speak English as a second language, that means you speak another language natively, correct? Correct. Native level language skills is powerful in aviation. It is something that airlines are looking for. They only get native level speakers, for the most part, if English is the second language, because otherwise you would be a native English speaker like me with no language skills. So if you have those amazing language skills, that comes with an accent. The airlines know that comes with an accent. If you're going to be speaking Greek at the native level, you maybe have a Greek accent. If you're speaking Portuguese at the native level, you probably sound like you grew up in Brazil. They know that. They're okay with that. They want the skill more than they care at all about the accent. Now, if you're feeling a little bit insecure about your accent, you can continue to practice your English. This is something we do even in coaching sessions. I also encourage people, if they speak their native language at home, like if you speak Spanish at home all the time and you're preparing for an interview, a good practice tool is to say, all right, family, we're speaking English so that mom can get more comfortable, because it's just a practice thing, right? It's just a practice thing. All right, so those are the confidence busters that I hear the most. Nerves, not experienced in interviewing, past failures, whispering in your ear, the way that you look, or the way that you sound. Now, I have a class called the Confidence Class, and it's actually, so you can buy it on the website or whatever. I'll put the links in, but it's a full class. It's like an hour and a half, but I'm going to today give you a mini version of the class. I'm not going to leave you hanging or say go buy it or whatever. So we're going to do a mini version of the class. So one of the things that we talk about is power posing. So I'm going to stand up here, and I'm going to show you a little bit of power posing, and hopefully not knock my computer off. So power posing is really, really powerful because, I'm going to sit down first to talk about it. Power posing is really, really effective because it's this really cool science magic thing that happens. You're actually, when you power pose, it's like reading oh my gosh, I can't think of the word. But basically, you are reading someone's body language. You're reading your own body language. That's the right word. So you're reading your own body language. You know how like we get a vibe from someone else based on their body language? Well, the way you carry yourself gives your own brain body language clues. And there are certain things that you can do to increase your testosterone, which is the hormone that makes you feel like a badass, and lower your cortisol, which is the stress hormone that makes you feel like you should run away because a lion is about to eat you. So the way that you do this is power posing. You're not going to do this during the interview, but you're going to do it before the interview. You can do it right before a video interview. Before a face-to-face interview, you could maybe do it in the bathroom or do it before you leave your hotel room. Okay, this is how you do it. Basically, what you're doing is you're trying to make yourself as big as possible because there's science. Because science, I don't know. So there's a couple. One, this is the best one. This is Superman or Wonder Woman. You can't see my whole body, but stand with your feet more than hip width apart, hands on your hips, chest out, chin up. And you're just going to stand here for a minute. I'm strong, I'm powerful, and you just let your body and your brain and your hormones do the work for you. Smile, chin up, chest out, shoulders back, hands on your hips. You're strong and you're powerful. This is why Wonder Woman stands like this, because it's freaking cool. This is why Superman stands like this, because he looks like he's powerful. And then the other thing you can do is you can just raise your hands. Making yourself as big as possible can be really helpful. And that is how you power pose to get those hormones working on your side. Another thing that you can do is positive self-talk. Now, this is not as weird as it sounds. Basically, when you hear those lies whispering to you like, you're too old to be a flight attendant, you're never going to be able to do this, you didn't pass the last interview, what makes you think you're going to pass this one? When you get these little things whispering to you, you speak truth to them. And it's kind of hokey, but use your name. Your name, your brain, since we were born, is trained to listen when it hears our name. You know, someone says your name. Nobody had my name when I was growing up. Nobody was named Abby. But now every little girl in the world is named Abby. So I'm at any store I'm ever at, I usually hear somebody's mama going, Abby! And every single time I snap my head, right? First of all, because she sounds like I'm in trouble. Second of all, it's because she's saying my name. So we're just wired that way. When we hear our name, we listen. So use your own name. So when you hear that lie that says, if you couldn't pass the last interview, what makes you think you could pass this one? You say, Abby, you have worked hard. You deserve to be a flight attendant. You have done your practice. You have done your workbook. You have made it this far. You have made it past the video interview. You have been successful in the past. You have been able to do things. You can do this. And you speak the truth to yourself using your name. Okay? The next thing that you can do this is the quick confidence class. The next thing to boost your confidence is get a win. Get a win. Do a video interview and pass it. Fill out an application and get invited to an interview. So that your resume, so you won on your resume. Fill out an assessment and make it to the next level. Just get a win and consider every little step a win. When you apply and your resume gets you an interview, hot dog, that's a win. If you pass a video interview, whether it is for an airline that you were, dreaming at night about or not, it's still a win. Maybe you need to consider even expanding out your interview net. Maybe you want to consider going into a different place in aviation for a time, maybe interviewing there. Or if you're not happy where you are now, doing some more interviewing with some other jobs that you would maybe be considering could help you get a win. Now, I'm not saying that you should go waste a bunch of people's time, but if you do see a job outside of the flight attendant career and you say, I think I would maybe want to do that, let me learn more about it, that's what an interview is. Get the win. Get the win, okay? Another thing that you can do is get help. I do offer interview coaching, private interview coaching, where you and I can get together online, on Zoom, and we can brainstorm the answers. You can give me what you thought you would say. I will give you feedback, and you will get to practice. If you can have someone say, that's the right story, yes, say that, oh my gosh, that sounds amazing. Maybe you shouldn't do it that way, do it this way. It will help you feel more confident, because then the first time that you're saying these stories, the first time you're giving these answers is not in front of a recruiter, because you've already done it with me. That can be very helpful in your confidence. Next is to do something that makes you feel good. So we're super limited because we can't do nothing, but do something that makes you feel good. Normally I say, get your hair cut, get some new makeup, go get your nails done, but nobody can do any of that. So get more creative, take a bath, go for a walk outside, look at some nature. One thing that I've been doing recently that has really, that is kind of a new self-care thing, is reading novels. Kind of just like nothing novels, just are interesting, get lost in a book kind of thing. Doing something that just makes you feel good can help your confidence increase. It just can. All right, now number 4. I'm going to put number 4 up on the screen. Here we go. You must prepare for the process. So the flight attendant interview process is intense. You probably all know that. If you haven't had a chance to go through the process yet, or if you're new to the flight attendant, aspiring flight attendant profession, the interview process is really intense. So the first thing that you do is you'll apply online and you'll upload your resume. If your resume meets the criteria, it's usually pre-screened by a computer. So if all the keywords are in there that the computer is looking for, you will be asked to do an interview. A lot of times that's a video interview, a one-way video interview, where you are sent a link and you are asked to record your answer to 4 to 6 questions. There's no one on the other side. It's awkward. It's a little strange. But after you do it the first time, it's much less awkward, obviously, because you did it once. You're doing it more, expanding that comfort zone. Then, if you're successful with that, a lot of airlines will do an assessment, which is like a personality test at some stage of the game. And then the final step is almost always a face-to-face interview where you will go to either an airline's headquarters or they will come to a town near you and you will travel to them. And you will have usually it takes several hours, 4 to 8 hour day where you are doing all sorts of different activities. You're standing in front of the group and answering a question, and you are completing a task as a member of a team with your other applicants, as well as doing a face-to-face, more traditional interview. So that's what the process is like. It's a very intense process. It could take several months, and it is definitely multifaceted. As you prepare for the process, there are some things that you need to do personally, and there are some things that you need to do professionally. So first, on a personal level, I want you to get a budget. So if you don't have a budget for the money that you do today, like your normal bills and your normal income for today, I encourage you to do that, because that's #adulting. Get yourself a budget. But what I also want you to do is to do a budget for what you think your life will look like as a flight attendant. So you can use some of the numbers that I did, $24,000 a year, $2,000 a month, plus a little bit of per diem. Let's see what my budget will look like. Do you have student loans? Do you have other debt? Are you going to be renting a crash pad and keeping your house? Well, that's an increase. Would you maybe sell your car though, because you won't need it? Okay, well, there goes your car payment. There goes your insurance. There's going to be some ups and some downs within that budget as a flight attendant, but I think that it's really wise to get a good picture as to what it will look like when you become a flight attendant. I also think that you should read some books. Reading books is always, that's something that we haven't always had access. We've never had as easy access to any kind of book as we do now on our phones and our Kindles and our Amazons, which is really, really cool. So there's no reason why we shouldn't all be always learning. So there's a couple books that I really love. Right now I'm reading Everything is Figure Outable by Marie Forleo. Just like it sounds, she's teaching you how to figure everything out. Every problem is solvable, basically. 48 Days to the Work You Love by Dan Miller is a fantastic book. Start by John Acuff is a really great book. I love Rachel Hollis. So that's Girl Wash Your Face, Girl Stop Apologizing. Jen Hatmaker has some really good books. Books that are just encouraging. They don't have to necessarily, there are also there are also several really great flight attendant career guide books. I have one, Looking Skyward. Ebony Christina, the Fly Girls Guide. The Flying Pinto has some books. I think hers is I can't remember the name of it. I'm sorry. But if you look on Amazon, these are all available. Or, of course, the flight attendant guides you're not going to be able to get at the library because they are all self-published. But these other books that I've named that are traditionally published, they are going to be available at the library. If you have a library card, more than likely your library has an app where you can go ahead and download books and borrow books digitally, since right now we can't really go to the library. Okay, that's books. I love books. Get your house in order. This is the next thing that you need to do to personally prepare for the process. Get your house in order. What I mean by that is have discussions with people in your life that your decision will affect. Now, if you have people that feel like they deserve to know your business, but they're not really going to be affected by your business, and you think that they might be negative about your business, then keep your business your business. But if you have a spouse or a partner, if you have children that live with you, it is a very good idea to have conversations with them so that everyone is prepared, and that mama doesn't just say, guess what? I'm going away for 8 weeks tomorrow and I'm going to be a flight attendant. Good luck. So that everyone is sort of prepared. Don't let anybody douse your dream, though. Don't let anybody douse your dream. If somebody has a problem with it and they have the right to have a problem with it, y'all figure it out. You can figure it out. You can do it. Figure it out. All right, now let's talk about some professional things to do to prepare for the process. First of all, you're going to need to get your resume. Resume airline ready. You need to get your resume airline ready. I already mentioned that when you apply, that resume will be pre-screened by a computer, and it will be looking for keywords to decide whether or not you can go to the next stage or not. It probably will not be looked at by a human. JetBlue and Southwest, from what I know, are the two airlines that do have humans reviewing resumes. Either way, the same resume will work for a human or a computer, but a resume that works for a human doesn't always work for a computer because they're just looking for keywords. They're not reading words in context. The 3 pillars of the flight attendant profession are customer service, safety, and teamwork. This is what the airlines are looking for. When you are writing your resume for every job that you have, make sure you have at least 1 bullet point for customer service, 1 bullet point for safety, and 1 bullet point for teamwork, if at all possible. If you work in a job where all your customers are internal, great. I want to see provide excellent customer service to internal customers and teammates. Awesome. Safety, if this could be safety or security. So if you're protecting someone's data, that counts as safety, as well as traditional safety things. Teamwork, if you work on your own, or you're a real estate agent, or you are an event planner, or if you're someone who kind of works on her own, then I want to hear you talking about working with teammates from other vendors. I mean, none of us just sit in a room all alone by ourselves all the time and never work with anybody that ever helps us do anything. So even if you have a job that's not traditional teamwork, you still have teammates, even if they don't work at the same company as you. Maybe you partner with outside vendors and those are your teammates. Okay, so make sure every job, customer service, safety, and teamwork. You're going to want to work on your interview skills. Study Hall is fantastic for this. The Flight Attendant Career Connection interview workbook, yes. Watching videos on YouTube. I have some. Other people have some great ones. There, you can read those books. You could go more career focused when you're looking at your books and less personal development, but you want to practice your interview skills. So because the interview skill is a skill, it means the more we practice it, the better we can get at it, right? So skills can be improved. Some people are born more skilled in some areas than others, but no matter what skill you want to get better at, if you practice it, you will get better at it. So if you practice your interview skills, you will get better at interviewing. This is where interview coaching is so powerful, because it is the best way to practice, because you're getting feedback from someone who is not going to just say, oh my gosh, that was awesome, if it wasn't awesome, and also knows what the airlines are looking for. But that's not always an option due to time or budget constraints. So even just saying your interview answers out loud to yourself, can be awesome practice. What I don't want you to do when you practice is just think in your head, oh, I'll probably tell that story about that time that I went fishing, and then move on. That is not practice. I want you to tell the whole story in star format about when you went fishing. That is practice. Say it out loud. Okay. Next, the next thing that you can do to prepare for the process is to get your interview outfit ready. This is something that you can do now, whether you have an interview or not. Start looking at the pieces. So many times in the Facebook group, I have people that say, oh my gosh, I have an interview next week. Where do I find a suit? Start looking for a suit now. Sometimes they have to be tailored. Sometimes they're hard to find. Sometimes they're an investment and you need to start saving money for them. So work on your interview outfit now. Put it on top to bottom, including pantyhose, and practice wearing it. I mean, you don't have to practice wearing it around, but put the whole thing on. Make sure you've got it all. Pick the necklace you want. Decide on your hair. Decide on your makeup. These are things you can do now while you're preparing, so that you have that step taken care of when you do get the interview. You could also take makeup classes. You could also take swimming lessons if you needed. You could take language lessons if you would like to improve in a language. These are all things that you can prepare while you're waiting. Now, right now, we might be in a preparation stage longer than we would have been if we were having this discussion last year, or than we will be if we're having this discussion a year ago. But right now, the preparation stage is going to be longer than we want it to be. Don't waste it, though. Okay, folks. All right, number 5. Here we go. Okay, non-negotiable number 5, you must act. Now, more than ever, you need to pull the trigger and apply when an airline is accepting applications. So right now, there's 1 or 2 that are accepting applications. There are 1 or 2 that are still sending out video interviews. I imagine that they are positioning themselves to be able to just take off and continue to grow when they are released to do so. We don't really know what is going to happen over the next 6 months, but the airlines that are deciding that they would like to accept applications and that they would like that, and when the ones that decide that they would like to invest their resources to interview people by video, then we need to be taking advantage of that. If you want to be a flight attendant, you need to apply to the airlines that are accepting applications. Unless there is a super clear and specific reason why you don't want to work for that airline or why that airline will not fit your needs, you should be applying. You should be applying. And then if you get hired by them, you should be super grateful and serve their passengers like you promised you would in the interview. But more than ever, pull the trigger and apply. Some people get so bogged down in, should I wait? Is it this? I don't know what's going to happen, that they don't even apply. And we need to apply. I already told you a little bit about when I was looking for a job in 2019 and I ended up with American Eagle, and then that training class got canceled. And then I ended up with interviewing with Air Wisconsin and I was unsuccessful. But then I got that beautiful, sweet, precious yes from PSA Airlines. But that was because I was just applying for the airlines who were hiring as they were hiring. There was not a lot of opportunity back then, just like there's not a lot here. But if an airline is accepting applications, you should be applying. The next action you need to do is get a passport. Not every airline requires a passport to interview, but they all require a passport to become a flight attendant. So to graduate from training, passports are an investment. Right now, we're seeing a big slowdown. We're seeing, the passport offices, like everything right now is kind of at a bit of a standstill, which is why if you don't have your passport, you should be getting ready to jump and apply for your passport as soon as possible, because we don't know how long things are going to take. We don't know if something else, there's going to be another blip in a couple months and things are going to shut back down again. We don't know. So getting your passport is important. It's an investment. If you need to start saving up for it, save up for it and then get it as soon as you can get it. It's something that should be a priority for you. Practicing your interview skills. I kind of have already gone over that a ton, so we're not going to do it again, but that is a way that you act. Seek advice from someone you trust. Right now, things are sort of strange. Things are kind of weird. Finding someone that you know, like, and trust, that understands the industry, and getting advice from them is important. I got an email from someone, I think last week, that said, hi, I just got it was nicer than that, but basically it was like, I got a video interview request from Frontier, but my friend who works at a mainline said that I shouldn't take it because all the airlines are getting ready to furlough. That's not true. There will be airlines that furlough. That is true. That person's friend at that mainline may get furloughed. That may be true too. Frontier sending out a video interview where it is not, do the video interview. Don't say, oh, they're probably going to furlough, or my friend said they're going to furlough. That person was answering her friend's question from a place of fear, because she is in a place of fear, because she doesn't know what's going to happen with her job. She doesn't know what's going to happen to her industry, to the company that she loves. She doesn't know what's going to happen. So she's in survival mode right now. That's not the best place to give anyone advice. Okay. And I'm not saying anything negative about either of these people. I'm just saying, reality wise, taking advice from someone who's in survival mode is not really the best place, because they can't come from that place of hope or even clarity. Okay. So make sure you're getting advice from someone who knows the industry as a whole and that you can trust. So asking questions in the Facebook group is a good idea. I try to kind of monitor them to make sure that our answers are all coming from a place of generosity and clarity and hope, and not the sky is falling, but still also being very practical as well in our answers. Also, you can reach out to me too. And I can do my best to help you. Coming to study hall is a great place to be able to ask questions where there's even like a little bit less people around, and it's not recorded either, where we can just kind of talk about it too. Study hall is perfect for that. Also, another thing that you need to do as far as your actions, and I've already said this, but I'm going to say it again, you need to complete every interview that you're offered. Whether or not you decide to move forward after that video interview is a different decision, but at this time right now, every time you get a video interview, complete it. Complete it. Do it. Yes. So now I'm going to tell you a couple inspiring, that was the last point, right? Number 5. So now I'm going to tell you, we've talked about a lot of like ups and downs and like pros and cons and like positives and negatives. And we've also talked about the fact that right now aviation is in a very tricky place, and it's actually kind of a discouraging place. But I'm going to talk, but now we're going to go over some success stories. I'm going to tell you about some people that I know who were able to reach their goals. I'm going to tell you about their background. I'm going to tell you about how we work together. I'm going to tell you what their path looked like to their final destination. Okay. And I hope that some of you will see either your story in some of these, or at least find inspiration that, oh my gosh, if they did it, I can do it too. So this is Yvonne. Yvonne says, Abby, you have made all this possible for me. Back in 2013, I bombed out of my Delta interview. I found Flight Attendant Career Connection. This small little family embraced me with encouragement and lots of support. Abby rewrote my resume and coached me several times. I was a tough cookie, but she got me ready from head to toe. March 2014, I graduated from training with ExpressJet. 3 months into my new career, I received a job offer at Southwest. By September, I find myself at the Southwest Airlines Training Center. I reached out to Abby several times during training, both in March and September. You will find no one else like her. Through all the stress and sleepless nights, Abby will be the one who will lift you up and put you back on track. Focused on your goal to become a great flight attendant. My 5 weeks of training at Southwest Airlines was challenging. I left my family and my business. Abby is blessed with the knowledge and insight to make your flight attendant dreams a reality. Thank you, Abby. So this was a Facebook post that she posted on the group that I took a screenshot of. So it was a public post that I was able to copy. But Yvonne, the reason that I share this is because I want you to see her story. So she was a mom of 2 grown sons. So she had finished the first part of her life. She was a mom of 2 grown sons. She was in her late 40s. Her and her husband owned a really successful insurance business where she had worked alongside him for a long time. And she wanted to be a flight attendant. So like she says, she had just finished her Delta interview in 2013. So actually, Flight Attendant Career Connection started in August of 2013. And so she found us about 4 or 5 months after we had just started. So she was right there at the beginning, which is why she says it's a small little family. But now we have almost 80,000 members. But back then it was a small little family. And we were able to work together. She was hired by ExpressJet pretty quickly. And she lived in Atlanta. ExpressJet had a base there at the time. She was based at home in Atlanta. She was able to start her career at home, just, less change, didn't need a crash pad, didn't need to commute. So ExpressJet was such a great opportunity for her. But it was not the end of the line for her, and it wasn't her goal. So a few months after that, she was able to get hired by Southwest Airlines. And see, only 3 months too. So her just being a new flight attendant was not a hindrance when her true dream airline came knocking. So she was able to get hired by Southwest. She went to training. I believe their training is shorter than 5 weeks now, just FYI for y'all. But she's still a flight attendant for Southwest. So she's been flying with them for several years. She's still not based in Atlanta because that base still isn't accepting transfers after the AirTran merger, but she's able to pick up trips out of Atlanta. So she works out of Atlanta a lot, which cuts down on her amount of commuting. Now let's talk about my friend Matt. So Matt is such a great guy. He usually actually watches this webinar when I teach it. So if you want to, you can pop in the comments a little, hi, Matt, we love your story. So Matt's just a really great guy. He's actually a good friend of mine that I've never met, although we almost went on a spring break cruise together this year in March, but it got canceled when we were on our way to California. So one day, Matt, we'll get to go on a spring break cruise together. So let me tell you a little bit about Matt. He was new to the job market. He was not like Yvonne at the end of his first career. He was at the beginning of his first career. And he was new to the job market. We got together for coaching, and he was able to get hired by JetBlue. He is a California boy. If you can see his profile picture up there, you can tell he is, 100% a California boy, got hired by JetBlue, was able to get based in Long Beach, and just really enjoyed his life. And JetBlue is a fantastic airline. For some of you, JetBlue is the goal airline because it is such a cool opportunity and such a cool business model. And it's a really great airline. Now, but that wasn't the end of the road for Matt. He, after flying for JetBlue for a couple years, he had the opportunity to interview with American Airlines, and we talked again before that interview, and he was able to secure an offer, and he now flies for American Airlines, and he just recently got his transfer from cold Chicago back to LAX. Now, he's one of the ones we're all hoping for no furloughs right now, but his experience and his path to his success is one that I'm really, really inspired by too. Now let's talk about Dana. So Dana's story is different again than the other two because Dana was a stay-at-home mom for 17 years. So when she first reached out to me, she had not had a job in over a decade, in almost 2 decades. So you probably know that for our resumes, we go back 10 years usually of work experience. Well, she had not worked in 17 because she had been raising her daughter. She's married to a police officer. And even though she had not been working, she had been a very, very involved volunteer, everything from dance to PTA to fundraisers, all sorts of things. So even though she hadn't had a traditional job, and that really, really worried her, when we put together her resume, it is a very beautiful, full of experience resume because she had been so active and involved in her community for those 17 years. Her daughter just started college, and she was finishing up her high school year, and that's what prompted Dana to do some soul searching and decide what she wanted to do with her life now that her daughter was grown and almost out of the nest, and she decided she wanted to be a flight attendant. So we worked together. She actually purchased one of the packages, the Looking Skyward package, early. And so we worked together for all of her interviews. So whereas Yvonne found me after some interviews, Dana and I worked together from the very, very beginning. She didn't have a resume, obviously, because she hadn't had a job. So we were able to create her resume, and she's with Southwest now too. And I have had the opportunity to meet Dana. Her and I have met. We're both huge Bravo fans. And so we got to go to SUR for dinner one night and hang out in the lounge and get a picture with Peter. So if you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. And if you don't, well, then you've got time on your hands. Go watch Vanderpump Rules or not, or work on your resume. All right, here's your last one that we're going to talk about right now. So this is my good friend Karen. All right. This is another good friend that I haven't met, but Karen and I have worked together for a couple years. So you can see this is a post that she wrote in 2015, and it's a longer one, but it's one that I want to read because I think that her words are powerful. So I told Abby that once I completed my flight attendant training, I was going to write a huge thanks to give her public recognition for all of her help, support, and time. I did 4 sessions with Abby to find the perfect fit. She is an exceptional career counselor, and if you want to polish up your skills to convey your shining personality to the airlines, she can help. I wanted to post immediately after I got my CJO, but I didn't want to shoot myself in the foot. So I decided to wait until I completed training. If this is your dream, don't give up. If you have been to interviews and been sent home, don't give up. If this is your passion, then please don't give up. Not everyone needs a career coach, and some are able to really nail the interview and stand out. But if you have tried a few times and things haven't been in your favor, then I truly believe Abby can guide you in a positive direction. I walked out of 2 face-to-face interviews with companies that I so passionately desired to work for. I walked out feeling like these companies saw my burning desire to be of service. They didn't, and that's okay. It led me in a different direction, a direction that might not have been my first pick for lack of being uninformed about the company. But I can say with 100% certainty that those two no's led me to the greatest and sweetest sounding yes. When you put in the work, great things can happen. Letting go of what I wanted and embracing change led me to a company that I am over the top excited to represent. I mean, excited. Abby's sessions are informative, interactive, and you will be prepared for either the video or the face-to-face interview when you complete your session. She won't sugarcoat it, and she will tell you what you need to work on. She will work with you and give you her undivided attention. Best of luck to all of you. I love this group and reading all of your posts. It's wonderful to see so many people support one another. Many blessings and thanks again. So one thing that's really cool about this story is that she ended up in an airline that she felt like wasn't her first choice. But once she got there and completed training, she was so excited to work for that airline. Like she says, she is so excited, over the top excited. But here's the cool thing. This post was written in 2015. This also was not the end of Karen's story. She, a few years after that, was able to interview and secure a position with Delta Airlines. And Karen is now a Delta Airlines flight attendant. She had a baby just about a year ago, and so her company offered a leave to her that she got to stay home for the first year with her baby. And then now I believe she's on another leave with this emergency leave, voluntary leave situation with the airlines. I believe there's thousands and thousands of Delta Airlines flight attendants actually that took a voluntary leave right now during this time. So this works out great for her because she's got a little guy at home. But she was super happy, and you can tell from her words that she loved her job. Her first stop, she worked for a regional, and her first stop, she was so happy with. But then she had another opportunity, and she went ahead and jumped on it. And she was able to, through that amazing opportunity, create a career that she loves. And now she's with another company that she really, really loves. So I hope that you've enjoyed these 5 non-negotiable actions that will prepare your flight attendant career for takeoff. I'm going to answer some frequently asked questions. Also, jump over in the chat and check out and see if there's any questions over there. But before I do that, I want to go over what private interview coaching is. So private interview coaching, just so that we're all clear, is the goal. The goal of interview coaching is for you to have a clear picture of what you bring to the table and the tools to clearly communicate your unique point of view and brilliance to your recruiter during the interview. And I want you to leave the session with confidence and the tools you need to answer any interview question that they could throw at you. So that's the point of interview coaching. It's not to make you into someone else. It's not to make you into what we think that they're looking for. It's to allow you to be your brilliance and to feel super confident. Interview coaching sessions last an hour, and they are priced at $125 each, or you can purchase 2 as a bundle and use one now and use one later for $189. That is the pricing as of the recording of this video, which is April 2020. During this weird time, though, I'm also offering a new way for us to talk to each other and work together in a way that's a little bit more approachable and also a better fit for what's going on right now. There are still some airlines hiring, obviously interviewing. I did a full 1-hour coaching session earlier this week for a Frontier video interview. But if that is not the position that you're in, and if that's not the position your budget's in, between now and the end of May, I'm offering something special called strategy sessions. So I received a message about a couple weeks ago now from Lala, one of the members of our group, and she and I had worked together for interview coaching in the past for her to be interviewing. But right now, she said, with everything that's going on and this change in the industry, I don't need a coaching session, but I need to talk to you. And so her and I came up with strategy sessions. These are 25 minutes long, so they're much shorter, and they cost $25. So they are much more affordable. They're much less expensive than a full-on coaching session, but they are different than a coaching session. The purchase of a strategy session is for you to have a safe place to brainstorm, troubleshoot, and above all, strategize a plan to best meet your needs. My 14-year history in aviation and 6 years of experience coaching has allowed me to help aspiring flight attendants through a variety of situations. So I probably have heard your situation before, honestly. Everything from stay-at-home moms, DUIs, to I'm too old, I'm too young, I'm too big, my husband doesn't want me to do this, I'm leaving him anyways, all sorts of stuff. So whatever your situation is, I've probably heard it before, and I would love to strategize with you about it. I want you to leave our session with advice specific to your situation, clarity where there was confusion, hope for the futures, and answers to your questions. So that's why this is different than watching a video or reading a blog post, because the advice is going to be specific to your situation. Like I said, they're $25, 25 minutes, now through the end of I was trying to put the link in the comments, but now I can't remember how to do it. So now through the end of May, you can purchase this. This is not something that I offer all the time, but this is something that I'm offering right now during this weird time in aviation and this weird time in our life. All right, now let's do some Q&A. I really don't need that up there, but here, I'm going to go hop over to the comments. If you have a comment, if you have a question, let's see. There's a lot. Okay. All right. I'm just seeing lots of like, hey, and like, I'm not really seeing any questions. So, okay, here's one question. I said that my job offer, I can turn the, let me turn the, I'm trying to take the picture down so we can see each other. It's a newfangled thing. Okay, so someone asked, she said, I said that my job offer with American Eagle expired after 180 days. Do I think that that's going to happen with other job offers? And I should have been super clear about this when I was telling the story, because I was not being considerate of people who do have pending job offers. It was very, very clear, even from the application stage, that job offers expire in 180 days with that company. I don't even know if they still have that same standard, but with the job offer that I signed, the conditional job offer, it was good for 180 days. So that was not something that they made up. And when they canceled our training class, they said, if we have another training class before the 180 days expires, you will get a offer into that class. And if not, you are welcome to reapply. So it was very, very clear from the beginning. It was not something that was surprising. They didn't just pop in at 180 days and say, guess what? Never mind. Okay. So I apologize if I gave people heart attacks, because I apologize, because that was not a thoughtful thing for me to do. I apologize. Okay. So I hope they don't take my CGO away. I apologize. Someone said that they thought this was more helpful than they were expecting. Okay, thank you. Okay, advice for people with short-term jobs on their resume. Any advice for people with short-term jobs on their resume? There's a couple ways to do this. There's a couple different ways to do this. One thing that I find is people with short-term jobs, a lot of times it tends to be in the same industry. So I was a waitress at several places, or I worked retail at several places. They tend to be within the same industry. So what I sometimes will do, I'm going to try to do this on, I would do like store, going to write it. Please don't look at my handwriting, y'all. It's horrible. Store. I'm going to show you what I do. Date. Job title. And this reminds me, we're going to be doing a free resume workshop in May. Stay tuned to your emails. Beginning, I think the 4th, the week of the 4th through the 8th, we're going to do a resume workshop for free. And then bullet point. This is how you could do it. I hope it's not backwards. You could do the name of the company, name of the company, name of the company, job title, and then your bullet points. So if you have the same job, server, you worked at Applebee's, Steak and Shake, and TGI Fridays, server would go here, right? And you have your dates over here. And then your same job listings. The reason that this is helpful is because it prevents your eye from looking at it and being like, whoa, that's a lot of jobs. Because it kind of looks like one job. Now it's completely honest. So we're not lying or anything, but it keeps you from having the same job with the same bullet points, same job, same bullet points, same job, same bullet points. You know, so this is one way you can do it that really helps your eye. Another thing that hopefully you'll find encouraging is I find that people who want to be flight attendants, we definitely have a bit of wanderlust in us because that's why we want to be a flight attendant. And so that can lend itself to having more than one job. You know, we're not really the kind of people that always get one job and just stay there forever. We're also a lot of times in very customer service focused jobs that can be seasonal or kind of move around a lot. Okay. Is there an age cap for being a flight attendant? Not in the United States. I mentioned Frontier. Is this a video we can go back and watch? Frontier, this training is going to be recorded and available on YouTube if you just got here at the end. This is the last question. Someone did a video interview for a major airline, and after this whole thing started, and I've not heard from them. Do you think I will still be considered after this blows over? Honestly, it will matter how long this timeline is. If you did a video interview with an airline that probably ends up furloughing people in October, then I imagine by the time they're able to recall all of those furloughs and get built back up and then start interviewing, it will be several years. And more than likely, they will want to clean out their pool of people who have done video interviews and start over. That's just honestly what I think will maybe happen. If you did do a video for a major airline like Spirit or Frontier or one of these other ones that are still kind of like they're not quite turned off all their hiring, then you may get a call back sooner, okay? And that's just the honest truth that these bigger airlines, if they end up furloughing, it's going to be a while. It's not going to be forever, but it's going to be a while before we hear back. And so more than likely, they'll need to update their system, okay? All right, guys. That's it for today. Thank you for spending time with me. This was just over 2 hours. I know that was a time investment. I appreciate you choosing to invest the time with me and Flight Attendant Career Connection. If you want to watch this recording again, it will be on YouTube. Please like and subscribe to my channel on YouTube because that definitely is helpful for me and my company. And then you'll get updates when I do new stuff. All right, guys, I will talk to you later. If you're looking to set up a strategy session, look for the post in the Facebook group, or you can send me a Facebook message. I love you all. I believe in you, and things will be better soon. That we know is true. Talk to you later. Bye.